Fights of Fantasy, a fantasy miniatures wargame by Christopher Reichenbach of the Tactical Tabletop. Christopher and I go way back. This is going to be a positive, glowing review. I'm just kidding on a number of reasons. One, this was sent to me gratis by Christopher. He and I go all the way back to the comment section a few weeks ago when he said, "Hey, Mr. Wargaming, can I send you a copy of my game? If I do, will you tell me about it?" I said, no. If you send me a copy of your game gratis, I will tell everyone what I think of it. But I'm not going to tell them what I think of it. This is not a review. This is a means of helping you understand whether this is a game that you might want to buy, available at Wargames Vault. I'm not going to, I will tell you what I like and don't like, but the goal here is to help you understand what it is, what's in there, and if it's the kind of thing that you might enjoy. Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't really enter into it. Very interesting game. A lot of interesting choices going on here, and we'll go through all of them. It's a little hard to know where to start because there's a lot of things that are really different. The first thing you're going to ask yourself is, hey, is this a skirmish game? Is it a mass battles game? And the answer is yes, which we will see here in a little bit. You will have units, and those units could be individual figures, or they could be individual figures and blocks of troops, or they could be just big blocks of troops with the characters kind of sprinkled in. That said, the fundamental unit of play is the individual figure. So if I have a unit of troops, 20 guys, they can be in a couple of different formations. They can be in loose formation, or they can be in tight formation. And there are advantages and disadvantages to each of those. But when it comes time to roll the dice, each figure is going to be rolling his own dice. And that's also true for contact. When figures are in contact, so if I have let's call it four figures and four figures. If I'm looking like this, see how there's three in contact? That's all that's going to happen. If there's three and then the fourth one over here, diagonals count, okay, in most cases. So you got to be in contact. And then, of course, there's a lot to this game. It covers a whole lot of details. It's a bolt it together and build your own kind of thing. Let's just dive in a little bit here. First of all, it's 169 pages, but of that 169 pages, about 110 of them are just stat blocks, right? We get to page like 51, 52, and even a lot of these latter rules here are specialized cases. It's got rules for watercraft, siege. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that you probably don't need unless you do, and then you'll be glad to have it. It's a very dry set of rules because it's more of a building kit. There's no setting incorporated into this, for better or worse. You know, we always like it when there's at least a few pages of a setting so we know what we're ignoring, or alternatively so that we know what the designer intended. The story of the battle that the designer is building. In this case, we don't have that. So we're a little bit adrift. Not only that, but it's really dry. It's very legalese. And as you can see, it's all bullet points, which could be good, could be bad. It makes it easy to reference things. One of the things I'll say about this is that, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about like the fact that there's not a lot of art in here. If you go to the Tactical Tabletop on Facebook, he's got some art. He's got some pictures of his table. They're pretty good. Probably could have snuck a few of those in here. Would have been nice. Just saying. Not only that, and listen, I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a layout guy, but there are a couple of little things that, just to start off with a little bit of negative here, you take a list like this, all these bullet points are just solid black dots. That's kind of a problem for me. He's talking about battering rams for sieges there, but let's find a really good example here. The missile phase, right? So this is how you shoot, or better yet, there may be an armor. The armor one is the one I really like because there are lists within lists, and it's so much easier to read. Like see how these are all just a bullet list? You don't need that. Just offset it a little bit. Make it a little easier to scan. And when you have something like this is at least right, offset it. Use little white dots here. And sometimes you even see that in, where is it? That's the Marshal. Where? Come on, baby. Come on. Give it to me. You got it. Breath attacks, morale attacks, right? Okay. I can't find it. I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just move on. Probably a little bit of room for improvement in the layouts. And even though it's really dry, there is one thing I can point out. Every once in a while, Christopher's personality shines through, and you got to know I'm going to call this out. He's got a rule called Deus Vault. If you're not sure what the rule is, even with all these little exceptional areas, these optional rules that don't really get used a whole lot, there will be times where you've got something new that you have to factor in. Lava, for example. How are you going to do it? Well, if you can't decide, then you just take a vote, right? We're doing a 5-on-5 battle. You're outvoted 7-3. That means a +4 for the side that's got 7 votes. You roll a d20, and then whoever wins, the victors have to shout loudly and enthusiastically, God wills it. So there is a little bit of fun stuff like that. There's also a rule in here that I particularly enjoy. I probably should have flagged it so that I wouldn't have to talk slowly while I tried to find it. I guess I could just delete this out, right? Saving some time through the magic of editing. Painted armies and worth. A large part of enjoying a miniatures war game is the use of painted miniatures, and don't I know it, brother. Painting is not something everyone enjoys. What are you doing in my hobby? There's the door. Hit the bricks, loser. All miniature wargamers enjoy having well-painted figures on a table. Sometimes blah, 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 blah. Unpainted army receives a 10% reduction in worth. Or players bringing a painted miniatures get a 10% increase in the total cost of their forces. Suck it. Gray prime people. I love it. Nice little bit of character in here. It's really great. So what is the game actually like? Well, boy, where do you start? I think we're going to start with the turn order and the action economy, and then we'll take a look at how you build rosters and how the game is actually played. Here is the turn order. Marshalling phase, magic phase, and it's kind of alternating activation. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You figure out the activation order in the marshalling phase. Then everybody does magic. Everybody does movement. Everybody does missile. Everybody does melee. Everybody does morale. Everybody does maintenance. So now we got to pull back and we got to talk about the marshalling phase and how it impacts each of these. So all the M's, baby, 7 M's, not just the usual 4 or maybe 5. Mr. Reichenbach says, get yourself a number of counters. In fact, he even includes a printed page here in the back of the book with a whole bunch of, you can kind of photocopy these. There you go. There's 49. And you're going to need 1 counter for every unit that's on the table. In a game with 5 versus 5 units, you're going to need 20 counters. Now, I'm not going to use counters. I'm going to use a deck of playing cards. I've got 20 cards here. Red and black, numbered 1 through 5. The aces are 5s. I also have a King Kalakaua. Get out of here, King. What are you doing? Oh, man. To talk about atavistic sentences here. Woo, ancestors are calling me here. Actually not. Kalakaua was a pretty cool guy. Right, so I've got my cards. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to do a little roll-off. And let's say that Mr. Righty here wins the roll-off. He's going to draw a card. He says, okay, I got a 3 here. He has to assign that to one of his units. We'll put that right there. I'm going to assign it to that unit. Now it's Mr. Lefty's turn, and he draws an ace. Don't worry about the colors, although we will worry about the, what do you call these things? The suits, right? They go in descending order. Spades on ties, spades beat something else. So he says, I'm going to put that on that unit. And so we do our 5. He says, okay, 2. Okay, that's good. 2 of hearts is good. And then Mr. Lefty. And so after we get all of our cards out, and once you've committed, so I put this card here. I'm done. This unit is done. So we got our 5 cards out. And we put them on our units. Now, notice there's still 10 in there, right? So those aren't going to be used. There may be some magic spells. There are certain situations where we may be able to adjust these. But for the rest of the turn, as we go into our morale phase, I think that was the next one, wasn't it? I was completely wrong. Magic phase. So what we do is we go in order. We now know that the ace of spades is going to go first. This is going to be this ace and then this ace. So if both of our guys dropped aces onto their wizards, this wizard is going to cast his spell first. Then this wizard is going to cast his spell, and then we're done with magic. There's nobody else that has magic. So then we move on to movement phase. Well, this wizard gets to move first, and he says, I'm going to move up there, and then this wizard, and then we go to the next highest. Number 2 gets to go, so they will move up, right? To 3, you have to wait, Mr. Oh, no, actually, 2, 3, 3. They did really good, man. He drew all the high ones, and now we go 4 of spades, 4 of hearts, 5 of spades, 5 of hearts. And now we're done with movement. Then it becomes time for the missile phase. So we do that in the same order. Then we do, so if these 2 guys wind up in melee combat, so they both moved, you know, this guy moved up and then this guy charged, they've hit. Now they're going to do melee attacks because the 2 of spades is a higher ranking card. The 2 will go before the 5. So 2 does his attacks and then 5. Then we do the morale phase, and then we do maintenance, which is kind of cleanup phase, right? So really interesting because you have to, man, there's just thinking about this, there's a whole lot to think about. I might want my archers to shoot first, but I want these guys to move first. So and because you have to commit to the turn order before you even know what the rest of the turn order is, you really have to kind of instinctively guess at, well, which ones are going to be, this is fairly high, but maybe not as high as I want. And as you commit, there's going to be some wonderful little gamesmanship and brinksmanship of, am I really going to be able to get my charge off first? I want my knights to charge your spears. I don't want to be charged. So interesting little subgame there in that marshalling phase. And I think after you get the marshalling phase down and after you kind of figure out the way these games work, I think it's going to move really quick. So very interesting, not quite alternating activation, but a way to keep everybody engaged throughout the entire game. I don't think I've ever seen a game where the activation was that way, that we do those steps: move, missile, move, melee, in quite this manner. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Now that we got the activation down, we can talk about the core mechanic. It's opposed D20 rolls with a lot of modifiers. And you do that on a figure-by-figure basis. We'll talk a little more about what that means in the melee phase, but we'll go through the activation, the turn phase in order. After you've got your marshalling done, after you've already figured out what the turn order is going to be, we do magic. And magic is interesting. Wizards will have anywhere from 30 to 150 mana points. They can get magic items that give them more mana so they can build these spells on the fly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to cast a harm spell. And I just picked this one because it's really easy. It's just a blasphemous spell. Magic missile, right? Fireball, whatever it is. And you can build it as you want. So the base mana cost for harm spell is going to be a 4. And then let's suppose I want to fire it 24 inches. That's going to cost me 2 more points. I'm up to 6. I want to dump a 2-inch radius. So I was at 6. Now I'm up to 10 points. It's only going to be 1 turn. Some spells, I can have it last for 3, 4, 5 turns. It costs more mana. Then we're going to juice the power and the potency. For the power, this is the bonus that you have on your casting roll. Remember, it's opposed D20s. If I spend 4 points, I'm going to get a +4 on my ability to hit him. His saving throw is going to be a standard D20. He may have armor that can affect that. A lot of different things go into that. The other thing here is potency, and that's how many wounds are going to be inflicted if you win the roll as the caster. All right. If it's successful, the target rolls 1 die for each model, adding armor and shield modifiers, like I said. If the roll meets or exceeds, ties go to the defender every time. Okay. And then we have this fun thing where if you roll an unmodified 20, then the only way to stop that is if the defender also rolls a 20. And by the way, if the attacker rolls another 20, it doesn't matter what happens. There's a 1 in 400 chance you're automatically going to hit. So there you go. And then you take off. So you can see that if you juice both of those, you're up to about 20 points to that spell. So if I've only got 60, well, let's say 80 mana, then I'm only going to be able to get a couple of those off. And by the way, you do have to take time off to recharge your mana. So you can't just drop one of these every single turn. Likewise with missile, which is our next one. So with missile attacks, it's going to be the same thing. You are going to fire. Each figure that can fire is going to fire. If I've got 2 rows, 2 ranks, the guys in the back rank are going to be at -1 because they're firing over the heads of their friends. You can fire over intervening allied units, but you're at -1 if you do that. Indirect fire is incorporated that way. All of my shooty boys are going to target your boys. Now, if you've got 2 ranks of guys, I may want to target the entire first rank. So it's a 1-to-1 basis. I may say, okay, my front rank is targeting your back rank. So that way, I got -1 on each of those back rank guys. I'll roll 5 dice. My back rank is targeting your front rank, because then I have -1 on all 10 dice. Okay, and we may need to do, and this is one of the things I'm not quite sure about. Do we just go ahead and roll 10 dice and then fill in like you do in Warhammer or most mass battle games? Or do I have to say, okay, I got 5 across. I'm going to roll this guy targeting this guy, roll the die. This guy targeting this guy, roll the die. I don't think that's the best, most efficient way to play the game. I think technically that's the letter of the rule. Instead, what I would do is I would say, look, my guys here are targeting your guys there. And, I got 5 guys that they're all going to, you may just decide, you may make choices based on that. Look, I'm going to fire 10 shots at your front rank. The first 5 shots are going to be at just standard to hit. And then the next 5 shots are going to be at -1 to hit. But they're opposed rolls. So would I have to roll twice for each guy in the front rank? Maybe that's the way to do it. I'm not sure. Now that I've said it out loud, I'm not quite sure how this works. I'm gonna have to get the figures on the table and experiment and go back and forth and reread the rules, because it's very different to have this kind of. It's very similar to a Dragon Rampant, or what they're now calling the what do they call it? The mass skirmish games. So there are a few things I'm not too sure about. Luckily, when we get to and then of course there's look at all these modifiers. Now it's not as bad as you think, because for the defenders we've got things like light armor. You get a +1 to your defense roll. If you've got light armor and if you've got a small shield, that'll give you another +1. So light armor, a small shield. When I roll, I'm at +2 to my roll. Okay. Same, but now with melee, it's a little easier because I've only got my 2 guys in contact. It's just going to be a combined series of roll-offs. Again, if I've got 2 lines of troops, 10v10, do I have to do 10 roll-offs? Really? That seems really weird. I'm not quite sure about that. We'll figure it out when we get these boys on the table. So that's pretty much how the game works. Now, as I said, you do have the ability to do multiple attacks here, right? So if you have a gang up, then you're going to do a roll-off here. And then this roll-off will be at -1 to the guy getting dogpiled, and this roll-off will be at -2. That's assuming the circles go first. If the square gets to attack first, I think he's at a total of -3. Again, I guess I gotta read that. There are abilities, different weapons will have different bonuses for whether they're +2 to hit, +2 to damage. Of course, what's going to happen here is everybody has basically your standard profile is going to have 1 wound, and a sword is going to do 1 wound. But as we add in, and we'll take a look at this next. Well, actually, we're going to look at morale next. But when we take a look at the profiles, you'll see they're a little weird, but they're very much a Legos style of building blocks. We do have rules for trample attacks. In some cases, your mounted figures will be a guy with a stat block and his mount with a stat block. In other cases, you may decide, you know what, I'm just going to use 1 stat block for the whole kit and caboodle. That's pretty good. So then we go into morale phase, and this is for recovery. Of course, morale checks are going to be made throughout the course of the turn. If you get pincushion when you're down to a third of your guys are bleeding out, then you're going to have to make a morale check. Leaders can give you bonuses on those morale checks. When you get down to less than 2/3 of your guys, you take a morale check at an even bigger penalty. And then, of course, a morale phase is where you try to recover from those. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about morale because it's a little complicated. The units they're not just like they're good or they're wavering or they're off the table. Instead, there's a couple of different steps in there. And those steps are disciplined. Yeah, I'm good. Distressed, dismayed, disordered, and dispersed. All right, dispersed means, yeah, they're gone. Okay, so 5 different steps seems a little excessive. What's the difference? Well, if you're distressed, then you're not moving anywhere. Okay, you got to consolidate. You got to get your boys back together. If you are dismayed, this is if you failed 2 enemy-induced morale checks. Then you turn from the foe and move to the edge of the table. This is your just fighting retreat, if you will. They'll move around allied units. They will fight in melee if attacked, but they're not going to make any missile attacks. And they can rally by making a successful morale roll during the morale phase, so if they have a recovery. Then we get up to disordered, which is where they've failed 3 subsequent, is that 3 in a row, enemy-induced morale checks? I think you fail 1, you become distressed, dismayed, And then if you fail again, so this is turn 3, I keep trying to get them to move, to recover, then no, you know what? This time they are going to be in open order because they're in flight. And there are different penalties for that. They make no missile. They'll only fight in melee if enemies block their escape. They rally if they make it successful. If they pass a morale roll caused by enemy actions, they remain disordered, continue to flee, and fight if necessary. If they fail, they retreat to the edge, then they're completely gone. Okay, they can continue to make rally checks. And then it says here, just place a status marker down there so you don't forget. So that's how morale works in this game. You got to fail a lot of checks, but there's a lot of different reasons to make morale checks. And there's a lot of different modifiers you can see up here, right? Your leaders are going to give you bonuses to those abilities. And let's see, if you're in open order, and this is one of the things when you're moving in open order. So here's open order, okay? You're at -1 when you're shot at by arrows, but your morale is -1 because you don't have anybody protecting your sword arm. If you are in close order, everybody's touching everybody else. We're all in one big hug box here. We all like each other. Our morale will be improved. We're more susceptible to being pincushioned by those shooty boys. +1 to morale. Close order allows mutual support, particularly when using pikes, polearms, whatever. Yeah, I think you have +1 to shoot at mass balance. So this is what I was talking about. That is it individual? Is it mass balance? Man, I don't know, man. Kind of depends on how you're going to use it. And then mixed order. This is where it doesn't meet either of those criteria. And so they don't reduce they don't have a penalty when they're shot at, but they also don't have the morale boost. So you got that going for you. Now let's talk about. Wait a minute. You told me how the game is played. D20s, opposed rolls. It's kind of numbered activation, kind of similar to the 2d6 delves. Now that I think about it. Anyway, what do the guys look like? Well, it's a little complicated, man. It took me a while to kind of wrap the old gray matter around it. Because the first thing you're looking at here is most games assume a default, like human. Just, a human is just kind of the standard that we go by. That's your vanilla. And this game says that's not true, right? We're going to take things one at a time. We're just going to make a whole bunch of classes. So for our medium bipeds, right? Bipeds meaning 2 feet. 2 feet bad, good feet, 4 feet good. The first thing you'll notice is it's medium. There's very small, medium, large, very large, and colossal. So each of those have different profiles. And as you might expect, so we're going to take a look at medium bipeds, melee. Then you've got melee boys, you've got missile boys, and you've got melee and missile. They're good at both. You've got magic, and they have different profiles for all of the different things that we talked about. Maybe it's magic and melee. Maybe it's magic and missile. So that's it, right? So then we get into large bipeds. And each one of those, so it's a little complicated, but man, you can do so much with this. Hey, I got a small biped who's good at magic and melee, right? A fighty wizard. I kind of like that. You can do that. And then you can add in different things like terrain immunity. My wood elves ignore woods. Or my frogmen ignore water, right? The breath attacks are not available for small bipeds. Okay. There are such things as morale attacks. So, if you have a terrifying dragon, you have to pass a morale check to get into contact with it or to shoot at it. That's what the morale attack is all about. But let's just take a look at the medium bipeds for melee to kind of get an idea. So, there's a lot of keywords going on here. I know that's very popular, right? Medium bipeds. They are medium, they're slow, they're terrestrial, they're bipeds, and this is class melee. So they also have this. You probably can't even see that there, right? Let's just kind of zoom in on that. We'll do size medium. Speed moderate. So typical speeds are going to be 8 inches. Notice inferior, common, superior, elite, notable, renowned, and legendary. There are rules for what the ratio of these need to be, but for the most part, like common is what we're looking at. The superior will be our knights. Our normal spirit. The inferior would be like farmers, okay? So they're going to have a morale of -1. They're not going to have any bonus to melee. Our spear carriers are going to be at +1 to melee. No magic, no mana. They got 1 attack. They'll do 1 damage, which causes 1 wound. They cost 11 points. If I want a second attack, that's going to cost me 3 points. And then we can layer on from there. I can add armor. I can add weapons. So if you've got spears, pikes, if I've got a large sword that does, maybe I got a superior force here. Okay, I'm going to go with the Dark Elves. They've got a big two-handed sword. That two-handed sword, if it's a superior, these guys are really good. They're going to have a +2 on the attack. Their morale is going to be a little bit higher. They're only going to have maybe they're only going to have one attack, but I'm going to have a +1 to the damage. They're going to do 2 damage each time, right? Or maybe I got a Dark Elf with 2 scimitars. And pet, maybe a pet cat, a large cat. There's rules for pets in here. 1 per customer, please. So he's got 2 attacks, right? That's where the extra melee attacks come in. I get to roll 2 dice, and you got to defend twice now. How would that work? Would I roll 1 and maybe you roll 1 defense die, and then I roll twice to beat you? And if both of my dice beat you, I do 2 wounds? Or, I don't know, if I have a big weapon, then I'm likely to do 2 damage, which won't do me a whole lot of good against another unit of bipeds. But if we do a little comparison check here, now we're looking at very large quadrupeds. Now we're looking at Huffalumps, right? A superior Huffalump, and you'll notice there's no inferior versions of that. So if I'm fighting a common Oliphant, they're going to move 20 inches. They're fighting at +3, and they have 3 wounds. So I got to check wound tracking status. All right, well, that's interesting. They do 3 damage, but now my two-handed swords, right, 2 whacks will put them down instead of 3. I like that. That's pretty good. And then, we've got morale. So let's take a look at some of these other ones, just for giggles. Our magic boy, he is going to be, let's do a superior magician. He's not going to have any bonus on melee or missile. He's going to have better morale. He's pretty confident, pretty cocky. He gets a +2 to all the spells and 60 mana. See, there you go. Here's where mana comes from. He's only going to have 1 melee attack. He's going to cost 73 points, but that's 60 mana. So, if I'm dropping 20-point spells, let's dial it back a little bit. My boom boom spell, I'm only going to spend 15 points. I'm only going to be able to cast it 4 times over the course of the game. Unless I invest in some of the magic items that give me a 30-point bump, I can get 2 more castings off, or I can juice the castings. But there's a lot of buff spells and a lot of debuff spells that you can hit your opponent with. I'd have to look. I think the buff spells, I don't know how that works. And again, just by the way, the D20 opposed roll, really swingy. It's going to be this is not a huge difference. A +5% on the magic modifier, +10%. I'm going to win 50% of the time with this guy that I spent an extra 50 points on. Instead of winning 50%, I'm going to win 60%. It's just a 10% buff here, guys. So that means out of every 10 spell castings, I get 1 extra success. I succeed 6 times instead of 5. I don't know, man. I have some some healthy doubts, I guess you could say. It's just who I am. I was going to say that's kind of one of the lingering effects of the fake pandemic, but I was like that before they faked the pandemic. I think, I don't know that there's a whole lot else. So, you have points, and then he does go through a whole little, here's how you set up a game. But most of the stuff that covers that is really basic generic stuff that if you're watching this channel, you should already know that. Now, it doesn't have any scenarios, but I will kind of walk you through. As I said, he sent me this ready to use units and characters, so we can kind of take a look here. A hobgoblin, what is this? Musician. Well, I don't want to talk about that. So we do have different stat blocks for musicians, standard bearers. They are going to give you bonuses to your unit's defense, right? And their morale based on what they're doing. I think the musicians will give a bonus to movement. So let's just take a look at hobgoblin swords here, shall we? What are we looking at here? They are terrestrial bipeds. They're fierce. I'm not sure what that trait means, to be honest with you. They're going to be doing +1 on melee. Their morale modifier is +3. I don't know what the asterisk is. That might be when they're in close order. I'll have to double check that. Melee attack modifier. Holy cats, they're at +7 on their melee. But if they're attacking another unit of hobgoblins, the guys they're attacking are +5 on defense. All right. Missile defense modifier. I think this is because some obviously it's because some defenses do better against missiles, right? Maybe large shields do better against missiles and worse against against melee. Magic defense, right? So the standard is 4. Maybe the shield gives you an extra +1 against melee. I don't know. We'll worry about that when we get there. Movement is 7. So that's kind of so what's the difference here? There's he's the leader, and these are the warriors. So each of these warriors, the unit is 140. Does that mean how many are in there? Does it say in here? Now I'm figuring it out live. I'm a little embarrassed by this. Maybe I'll edit this out. Spoiler alert, I'm not. Each combatant is worth 28. There you go. So you can do the math. They have 5 of these guys is going to cost you 140 points. And then you add your leader on, and he's worth 33 points. Yeah. So that's what, so the combatants are worth, that's each individual figure. So we're up to 173. There's a purpose to this, by the way. 173. If I'm going to get him a standard bearer at 30 and a musician at 30, that's going to bring me up to about 240 points for a total of 8 hobgoblins. Now, why do I say that? Because I want you to know how big a battle the game designer expects you are going to play. And that's right about here. I'll even zoom way in on it so you can see. Worth per battle. How many points are we talking here? For every 12 by 12 inch section of the battlefield, you're going to want about 300 points. Remember, I just showed you a 250 point, give or take, 230 point unit. So those 8 hobgoblins, if I'm playing on a 6x4 table, that means I'm going to have the equivalent of well, I tell you what, let's just do this. Let's make that a unit of 10 hobgoblins plus the 3 leaders, 350. So let's say it's a 4x4 table, 4 inch by 4 inch, or 4 foot by 4 foot. That means you're gonna have 16, and you're gonna have about 16 of those units. That's a pretty big fight. I don't know if I'm going to pay a whole lot of attention to this. Instead, I think what I'm probably going to do when I play my first game of this, I'll probably put together a 5v5 and keep the points about the same. And then we can work through some of those questions that I had about how the game plays. Is this interesting to you guys? Does this kind of build it from the ground up appeal to you? Do you think the D20s are a little too swingy for a game like this? Are you frustrated because I don't really know how to play this game? Does this just tell me what you think? Help me out here, guys, because this review, it feels like a dog's breakfast, but it's not a review. It's more of a flip through, and it's more of a means of like fixing how to play the game in my short-term memory so that when I sit down to play it and understanding what I don't understand. And when we do, for those of you that are fans of the channel that come back to actually see the actual play of this, we'll have some of those questions answered. And of course, we're going to have other questions. We learn on the fly here, and we get a little bit better each time. And yeah, with all the mistakes we make in that first video, maybe those are mistakes that you identify and you go, well, I'm not going to make that mistake. Well, good. You can make mistakes of your own. And you can tell me about it down in the comment section. I like comments. Comments are one of my favorite things. Comments and ice cream sandwiches. Hey, until next time, guys. Give it a look. Wargames Vault. Type this into your Facebook machine and give Christopher Reichenbach a shout out. And also I'll try to remember to throw a link in the description to the guys that have a little podcast about this. I recommended them a little while ago. They're a small channel, less than 500 subs at the time of this. So click on that link and go follow them and click on the comments and just click on everything. Just everything that's there, just click on it. Until next time, I'm praying for you.